it's okay not to know everything. There's not a single person in the world who knows everything. Your manager does not know everything. Nobody in the company knows everything. It's a team effort. You have to work with others and you have to learn along the way. It's a never-ending learning process at any organization you're at.
He's the data guy and he wants to have a talk with his business pals while they're off the clock on podcast like a business.
Well, welcome, Tamara. And Tamara, how do we say your last name? Fuchs?
Fuchs.
Fuchs?
Yep.
Welcome, Tamara Fuchs. Thank you for joining us today on Podcast Lab as we dig into what does 3 to 5 years of experience really mean? And get to ask somebody who works in the world of talent acquisition as a HR specialist and generalist. Generalist?
Yes.
Correct. Go ahead and I want you to explain what all those are in a minute here too. What is all these different HR roles? Because to people who've never been in a company, everybody's HR and everybody's a recruiter or a talent acquisition person. I would love for you to help with that. But help us sort through how we get into companies. How do we get through the HR part?
Yeah, awesome. So first off, thanks for having me today, guys. I really do appreciate it. And I'm very excited to, share some of my own experience, my own knowledge, and of course, hopefully help others out there. So again, thank you. To start and give you some insight, I think it is important to determine, what my role is in this part of the process and kind of generally speaking. It really does depend on the organization, of course, but a lot of times you'll deal with an HR recruiter and that's going to be your main talent person. They're going to be the one working with you on, the entirety of the candidate experience is what we call it here at Janel Group. So just something for my current organization. I think other organizations might find it under talent acquisition or talent specialist. HR and HR generalists tend to do some of the post work with those types of candidates, but that's really generally speaking. So my role here at Janel Group is to be a recruiter, and the generalist part is kind of part of the onboarding experience once we get that candidate. So a lot of what I do, 80% of what I do is, working with candidates and hopefully filling a role for us, but also, changing their lives and giving them a job that they hopefully truly love and can do well in. So a little bit about myself there and about the HR experience. So I do want to kind of touch base on that question you asked around, 3 to 5 years experience and really what that means. This is a question I think everybody asks everybody, right? So yeah. I do want to start with it and let you guys know, of course, this is my own opinion, of course, with it, but I do think it is a question that is very relevant to a lot of potential candidates and also a huge topic within the HR industry itself. So, for me, I think it's a suggested number, and I think your mentality should be that it should continue to be suggested. For me, my job is to really find the best talent possible and help retain that talent. So my perspective is, why am I going to limit myself to a number or a range of talent when, there's so much talent out there? And I think this really goes to your first understanding of 3 to 5 years. For me, I look at it as mid-level experience. I think taking that number away really helps you get a good goal of what you're trying to look for. To me, that says, we want somebody with practical experience, someone who's been in the industry, but does that necessarily mean 3 to 5 years? No, I don't think so. For us, we can look at somebody who has maybe 2 years experience, but works on, 3 to 5 accounts at a given time, and look at somebody with 5 years experience who's working on 1 to 2 accounts at a time. Their level of expertise and knowledge may differ based on years, but is it really going to differ based on the actual experience and skill set that they have? That's a question you figure out during interviews. For us, really, I also think it's important to kind of hone in on, does our staff currently have the needs and the resources to accommodate somebody with less experience than 3 to 5 years? That's a huge part of it. So that number, although is not a number we fixate on, it is something that we say, okay, well, we do need an experienced candidate at this time for us, but also as a courtesy and as a fairness to the candidate who's applying. If we don't have the bandwidth or the resources at the current moment to train properly, we're not really doing our company any justice, and definitely not going to help that candidate from the start with their career with us. That's Absolutely. Not to say, it's not to say we're not going to hire them in the future or that there's not a place for them at our organization. It's just maybe not the right time. And I think that's a very fair statement that a lot of people tend to shy away from.
Yes.
So, I think.
But you'd rather they apply and, get to hear from you that, hey, you don't have it, or if this little
Exactly.
tweak was to you, you'd fit this perfectly.
Mhm.
That's great. I love to hear that stuff too, because it's very disheartening when you get out of school and you're like, I've already put in 4 years and now I need 3 more before I get this entry level position. And I think it is a lot of that too. And soft skills too, I think, are something people talk about generally a lot. But to your point, when you're looking for that mid-level manager, that's somebody that I can't tell you what needs to be done. I need to give you a directive and know that you're just going to kind of handle the project and get it done. And they really don't. If you don't have somebody available to help a new person with that, it can seem daunting, and it can seem like you're just failing in the role when really it's just a fit issue.
Exactly.
If I may,
that's cool.
on that topic of the having gone to school for 4 years, when I was in university, I was told that my degree was roughly 2 to 3 years of experience on a resume. Is that something that you guys consider at all? Is that a separate requirement? Have I been lied to?
So Ryan, I wish I could give you one straight answer for the whole HR world. I can give you our answer for our org. The answer is we look at this. However, if we need practical experience in a job setting or a workplace setting, it won't unfortunately count. I do want to mention I'm in the same boat as you. I actually went off after my undergrad right into getting my master's degree thinking, you know what, this is going to look great on paper. It's going to be amazing. And, honestly, I can tell you it really didn't hold very much weight. People said, well, you don't have that experience. And it was very difficult for me personally, kind of stepping into the role. And I had to pivot and figure out, okay, how can I demonstrate the skills I learned in school and make them as practical as possible to really stand out? And that was a challenge for me. And I think it's a challenge for a lot of people at the current moment for several reasons. But to kind of circling back, a lot of organizations look at that number, especially some of the larger organizations, and say, well, you don't have that number, unfortunately. And it'll vary. So. I mean,
that makes a lot of sense. The practical application of the experience. I definitely feel like my 4 years of university was not very practically applicable. I definitely recognize that coming from a computer science background. Rob, what do you think though? You came from the business school. How applicable was that knowledge? Because that knowledge feels like it's a little bit more applicable than say, making a to-do app for the 3,000th time to demonstrate a new language.
I went to school for business because I realized, man, everybody in some way works in a business. I need to make money. And if a company can buy a truck and use that truck to make more money than the truck costs, well, I'm a truck. I'll be a mother truck, man. I'm going to be the best truck around. And so I learned how to kind of identify for me, what can I do to generate revenue and how do I actually contribute to a company? I was at a company as a temp agency and I made a macro in Excel that automated the majority of my jobs. So they'd give me a stack of paper and expected me to spend all week typing it. By Tuesday, I was done. And they're like, that's your work for the week. And I said, well, if there's other stuff for you to do, great. If not, I get it. But this is what's adding value. And so they moved me from that into a technical position because they realized the value I was adding was being wasted. Me typing during the day was not worth it. I should be helping build some minor systems, right? Get acquainted. I wasn't a major developer at that time. I'm just a guy with a business degree who could build macros, but I was able to express myself in the company and show what they valued in. I was able to identify, hey, they care about this. I'm going to learn a little bit more about Excel and a little bit more how to type 4 sentences and have it automate the next 6 columns instead of retyping the same thing 100 times. But, I always had a different perspective on that stuff. I'll also say, though, in business, too, nobody tells you really how to sell yourself. When you went through and got your computer science degree, the ability to get a job in computer science is a completely different skill than computer science itself. And even in, I love Tamara. I want to totally dig into your background because I know you've got a great background in psychology and I nerd out on that kind of stuff. I would love to know the data behind some of that stuff. But I think that's a very good example too. When you study psychology, most of HR is psychology. It's all the different aspects of it. But I think we're all kind of learning the how do I sell myself? How do I express the value that I have and find a place that values it? I will say that Janel Group in general, and hashtag not sponsored, right? But when I met with Erin and I said, I have questions about talent acquisition, she immediately emailed Tamara, and Tamara CC'd her boss and another specialist because they're like, we're going to help you. And that's how you can tell an organization you want to go to. I mean, that stuff right there is advertised. They didn't do it for the ad. They didn't know they were even helping our little show. You know what I mean? But that's how I do it. I kind of go both ways. I say, does what I read in the JD, can I kind of talk to these things? And then I say, does the company put up their side? Are they showing up and saying, you know what, you're not going to be a fit for this role because X, Y, and Z? I'd rather hear that from the recruiter than fail in the job personally. And people like Tamara are a great middle ground for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback on part of what you said there too. So for us, a main thing of what we do and part of our day-to-day is we include on our applications and job descriptions, hey, if you don't meet the qualifications, apply anyway. And then we personally will make sure we get back to every single candidate that applies. We don't want to ever leave somebody hanging.
Awesome.
It's just not professional in our opinion to do that. And the whole process is a two-way street. They're interviewing us as well. And it's a really big part of the process to ensure that, we're the right fit for them just as much as they're looking to be the right fit for us. And so, even if it's not a right fit now, talking them through that and saying, hey, listen, it's not a right fit because X, Y, and Z, which granted we can't do with every candidate, giving them that personal feedback, but just letting them know that right now that's not the case is a huge step forward, because in 2 years' time, when they do have that experience, who did they really enjoy interviewing with, and who did they find as their maybe home company, so to speak, of this is where I want to grow and learn and end up for X amount of time. So
I really love the progressive mentality of they're interviewing us as much as we're interviewing them. I think that's been a relatively new shift in the mindset for the hiring process. And to hear that from you, like so candidly, is really, it gives me hope.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dating in some regards, right? Like I'm going to see each other. We're going to read each other on paper. We're going to see each other a couple times. Then we're going to have a lifelong relationship together. And it's, it's a Hail Mary. You need people to help translate that. Because I'm telling you, the person who wrote that job description, they just know they need some sort of rock star to help solve their problem. And they're like, so they'll go to somebody on the internal HR. I don't know if that's Tamara, if that's what you do, if there's somebody else who writes these, but they'll say, well, here's other job descriptions similar. And, that's why it's really easy to have the 3 to 5 years, because everybody wants 3 to 5 years. Do I need entry, medium, or high? So they start with those templates, but then it's really difficult to distill down, what does this role need? Like, we don't need a guy who's got 10 years of experience for a 2-year of experience role. But maybe they need to have some more on the business side. So I'd love anything you have around that whole experience and how you handle that, Tamara.
Yeah, absolutely. So to share with you, for us, we have a very small HR team. We're a mid-sized company. So our team is about 3 individuals total. And me being one of those, I really handle all of the recruitment aspects, all of the talent aspects that we see. It's something that as I've onboarded to the company, I've been taking over. And I think hopefully eventually that'll be kind of my little niche there. And that's what I'll really do. So I hopefully can continue to grow at the department itself within, or I guess not the department, but the talent part of the department here. And with that, for me, I find it important to, kind of get into the nitty gritty of everything, be able to do everything on my own, and then, be able to teach others within the org so that we can all have a strong workforce. Because like you mentioned, somebody else may be writing that job description. I will say internally it is me. But maybe one day we're so big that our managers need to send us those job descriptions. And it's our job as HR to teach them how to do that appropriately, right? So, that's not a natural skill that comes to you. You may have really great written skills, but, like you mentioned, you're selling the company. You are selling this role to somebody and saying, hey, we really want you to, apply. We really want you to essentially buy into maybe working for us. And then the whole process itself, it's funny you mentioned it, but really recruiters are salespeople too. I will say I can be very candid. I never wanted to go into recruiting. As you mentioned, I have a very interesting background. It was never something I saw myself doing for the purpose of, I heard recruiters they were spoken really badly about, people just don't care. They want to just hit their numbers. They will tell candidates anything they want to hear.
All true, man. I've lived through so much of that. I love that you're saying it. It's so, oh man.
It's very true. And you know what? I'm not going to, point fingers at any type of person or company, but there are specific companies that do have these types of mentalities and goals. For me going into it, I said, well, if I'm going to go into recruiting, if I have to get my foot in the door, if I have to really sit down and say, what can I be good at? I'm going to look at recruiting in a way that is I guess it's a sales game, so to speak, but I want it to be the most genuine form of sales that we can do. And for me, when I was looking at positions prior to coming on to the Janel Group's team, it was, hey, I want to find a company that's genuine, that I care about, that I can say, hey, we have positions and we have weight behind that. We have fair salaries, we have fair benefits. We have a really good role here. And make it more so, I'm selling you on this because I know you're great for it, rather than, hey, we really need somebody. You look great. I need you in here. And then kind of 5-6 months down the line, them saying, wait a second, this is not what I signed up for.
I love you even just saying that you want them. Like, there's so many people applying right now. They're getting ghosted left and right. They're just like, wait, somebody wants me to apply? Like, just hearing that might be the hope they needed, Ryan. How about it, man?
Honestly, man, especially after we had an interview a couple episodes ago with a junior data analyst. He just got out of university and he's looking around and he was telling us he's applying for like, what was it, Rob? Like tens to hundreds of jobs a week and hearing back from less than 10 of them.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It's all crazy. But I mean, to her point, she's a nice small organization and they can get through some of it, thankfully, so far. I've worked at like, huge companies that have thousands of employees and they have like software that's already weeding it out. It wouldn't even get to somebody like that if you're not applying right, That's actually
something I wanted to talk to you about. I was wondering if you have any experience with this sort of automated hiring processes, because let me tell you, those all I've ever heard is that they're a headache and you basically just lie on your resume. You just keyword stuff it for whatever the job posting says you should be keyword stuffing it for.
Yeah. So you're right. 100%. That's basically what happens with those types of systems. So to share with you, what we call as an ATS or an applicant tracking system is that software that you're speaking to. And there's so many different companies out there, and they all can do those. They have those functionalities. But the interesting part is a lot of those systems actually have the functionality to not use that automation or to use parts of it, not all of it. So to share with you, Rob, great point there too. Huge companies, they probably have these softwares, as Ryan mentioned, and, they can utilize those as automation. Every system, if you're, a $1 zillion company, let's say, I know that's not true, but let's say it was a huge company, they likely are using a software. And if they're using automation, there's no reason they can't set up an automated workflow to at least have the courtesy to say, hey, we didn't select you, we're not moving forward, or whatever the case is. So it really makes it, these systems make it easy to at least let a candidate know ahead of time. And even if it's not personal, it is something to say, hey, you're not selected at this time. And I think it is becoming more of a norm now to have these systems in place and actually get back to the candidate, which I think is super important. To kind of pull back a little for us, like I mentioned, we're a little bit smaller. So we actually do use an applicant tracking system. And we do have workflows that are somewhat automated. So if I say, you know what, I've read through somebody's resume and I don't, feel that they're the fit at the current moment, we'll go ahead and let them know via email, and it's automated. Once I say no, it sends them an automated email.
Yep.
Now, as far as like using AI to kind of parse through a resume ahead of time before it reaches my eyes, we are not a large organization where that's necessary just yet. But let's say we were, it was 2 people on a team, me and one other person, and we were getting 1,000 applications a day. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not something we may look to use, because it's just impossible to keep up with, that type of level of applications. I do think, though, it is important that if we were to use a system like that, or any company using a system like that, it's not automatically maybe sending them that rejection, but maybe it's sorting them into different folders that say no keywords were found, 3 keywords were found, or whatever the case is. And don't necessarily push them aside just because a system told them to. Maybe it's as simple as, okay, we'll look at the ones we really like now, and then you know what, we'll prioritize this to say, hey, the system said X, Y, and Z, but let's take a look, because this is a business where, yes, technology is great. We're all moving to that. I love it, but it's also a human industry. We're part of a society, and that's somebody's livelihood. That's somebody looking for a job for whatever the reason may be. Maybe it's growth. Maybe it's they don't have a job and they need to support a family, and you're relying on a system for that. So I could go on forever about that, but my sense would be to, definitely utilize technology however you can, but be mindful of those things. And if you're making those decisions, make sure that you're making them, with those particular ideas and kind of longevity, that career path that you may see for them, or whatever that role may go to next. Make sure you're aware of those things. So,
gosh, man, I hope a lot of other companies learn from you on this, because I wish I had other HR people like that.
Yeah, definitely. It's not an easy one. There's a lot of gray area, I should say. It's not easy, but there's a lot of things that you can do, especially if you get creative and you utilize and leverage technology that really go a long way. So
yeah, but to your point, like I took a multi-$1,000 class on machine learning where I study the most advanced algorithms from the best people who do it, who find fraudsters at huge banks, right? And you know what he said? He said, never get to a point where you build a system where it ends up that somebody says, computer said no. And what he means by that is, imagine you build a banking system and it's got to approve loans for people's houses. And it just spits out no. And you're like, why? And the person says, I'm not sure. The computer said no. And he's like, that's not an acceptable way to run a business. That's not an acceptable way to deal with people. He's like, even though we're leveraging technology to the max here, it's a people business, and you got to keep that focus. Otherwise, you get lost in the data. Now, I love to flip it the other way, too. And I say it's not always all about the data. It has to be about the people, and it has to be about the system. But if you're not looking at data and you're not using the technology, then it's just about hope in the system and feeling. And you're not really. So it's this kind of, seesaw pattern. You got to look at data, but you got to listen and relate to people and have those conversations and really build the, relationships. I'm sure you do all that.
Yeah. So actually, I think that's a great segue. I personally really love data. It's something I grew up around, and it's something that I thought I was going to go into with my background. So to share with you, I do have a background in IO psychology. So that's actually really characterized by basically the scientific study of humans and their behavior within an organization or the workplace. And that's really, really supported by data usually. So it's something I found super interesting. I got the degree in it, and then I left and went, gee, it was hard for me to find a job, and I kind of I reverted back to recruiting. And although I love what I do, I thought, how can I put this passion of mine and inject it into what I'm doing? Why not?
Yes.
So with our company, we didn't have necessarily a set of metrics that we were following. We had some kind of idea, but we didn't have any in place. And so part of the things I started to do when I first kind of worked with, our HR team and said, hey, this is what I think we'll need going forward is metrics. We need metrics. And within the past 3 months, we were able to finally implement a pretty standardized set of metrics that we look at. And, we've been able to, within the last quarter, take a look and say, look at our progression, look at what we've done well, awesome. Look at what we've not done well, look at how much we're spending. Like, this was a huge thing that we were just guessing at or kind of putting, we had the end goal, we had the result, but we didn't really have the story behind it. Sure. And the data was really proving to us, around the story. One of the cool things we found was one of the metrics we look at is your average cost per hire, right? Sure. The national average is about $4,100, between $4,100 and $4,400.
And no, that's just hiring people, right? That's just getting them in the door. That's not onboarding and training and all that. That's just, right. I don't think people realize how much you guys spend to just get somebody's name. Yeah. Accepted. Like, anyway, sorry to cut you off.
No. It's insane. It is. It's insane. You'll be surprised. Some of our positions are $26 per application. So, we want applicants and we're encouraging that, but it does cost us. And it's an investment for us. If for the right candidate, it's an investment. So that national average is quite high. And, we were like, okay, well, I think we're tiptoeing that number. I think based on what we put in, we were actually less than half of the national average, which was amazing to see.
Heck
and then
yeah.
we were like, okay. And then we said, hey, like, we can allocate more because we're not spending this money. We can allocate a little bit more, and maybe we can expedite our process. Maybe we could speed it up. Maybe we can do something extra for a new hire. We have more freedom to explore these options and make our process better, make the candidate experience better, and then really hopefully retain talent, which I think is everyone's main goal. So.
And I was gonna jump on that when you said do something extra for the candidate, because I'm sure people are like, what are you gonna do for the candidate? You already hired him. But I know HR likes to think of the long game. You want to think of that person seeing themselves at the company because it's expensive to train them. It's way cheaper to keep somebody happy and progress them through the years. And, it's easier, honestly, on most employees. Switching a job is one of the most stressful things that exists. Switching a job and a house and having a new baby, I think, are like the top three. Mm-hmm. But, it's way easier to help onboard somebody like that. Want to talk through that and what are the metrics around that?
Yeah, so I wish I could
long-term retention, I guess. Like, how do you even approach that as a problem? I guess.
Yeah, so it's a lot. So there's a lot that goes into figuring out those metrics, and I'll be very transparent with you.
You don't have to give us all of our secret sauce either.
No, so of course. we have. So the metrics we've built out are really more around the actual candidate process at the moment, and then we're going to shift to the focus of retention,
like a phased approach.
Right, exactly. We didn't want to bite off more than we can chew, to be honest. And,
genius idea.
For us, that was really important. And like I mentioned, kind of with the initial recruiting metrics, we have an idea, we have a taste of it, but we don't know exactly how far off or, how close we are to it.
Right.
I will say we're very lucky. I think it has to do with our industry as well, but we're very lucky that a lot of our employees are actually with us 5+ years. Some of them, I think our longest employee is about 30+ years. So, we do have some really loyal talent. And we understand we're in an industry where once you kind of get in, it's very niche, you stay in it and that's it. So we're thankful for that. But we also have a lot of talent here that, comes in for, 1 to 3 years and then ends up moving forward. We kind of teeter between very long-term and kind of more on the entry-level 1 to 3 year mark.
I love that idea. Let's drill in on that for a second. So like you think of somebody in logistics, because Janel's logistics, and let's say somebody's in a warehouse and they're doing stuff there, but maybe like I'm year 8 or 10 in a warehouse and I'm like, I want to be a marketing analyst. I know I'm probably making good enough in the warehouse. I may even have to take a little bit of a pay cut to get an entry-level analyst position, but I want to go learn that stuff. I think that's always a good thing to do, and I highly recommend people, if you're going to go look for another job, first look for another job at your company, and then, give them a shot before you go. Don't just go shopping around and talk to random managers or whatever. Let your boss know and, work through the appropriate process. But I always think that's a great way. How do you take somebody who's in such a niche kind of hands-on job? And I mean, maybe I'm just making up something that never happened before, but.
No, you're spot on. So I think that's amazing advice. I think that is true for anybody in any organization. Look at your company first, see if there's any gaps that your skills can address. Really, speak to the ones who can influence those types of changes or goals. And, maybe the answer is no, but you won't know that unless you have that conversation. I think one of the best times to have that conversation is going to be during a performance review. So if you do have annual performance reviews, that is a really great time to say, hey, this is what I've done well. My path moving forward is really something more along the lines of X, Y, and Z, right? So it's a really great time to bring it up. It's also a safe space to bring it up because that conversation should, if your manager is kind of, well adversed in the performance reviews, be kind of leaning towards that anyway. So really great point there. For us, it's very true as well. So exactly what you mentioned, if you have an inkling to do something else, most companies, if they're able to, they'll talk to you and accommodate that. Really great example. We have our innovation and processes manager on our IT team under Aaron, who actually was a branch manager. He also worked in operations and he's been with us a really long time. And he just said, I'm not good at these things, or I don't like these things, or I want to do X, Y, or Z thing, whatever the case was. And we said, all right, well, we love having you as an employee. Let's figure that out. Let's see how you can benefit us and we can benefit you. Because really, again, circles back to that two-way street. It's not just during the candidate process, it's the whole entire employee experience, Oh,
for sure. Think of how much stuff he knows in that role that he's bringing from the other roles that's going to be super valuable. You probably wouldn't be able to recruit for. I mean, you can't recruit for how to run a branch, he knows it.
Exactly. And it's very true too throughout our organization. That's one really great example, and I love sharing this on interviews, so I'm happy to discuss it. But last year during our performance reviews, about 7 employees kind of came to the table and said, I feel stuck. I feel that my skill sets could be better used doing these things. And I see these gaps in the organization. And I really think, I think I could help. I think we can do these things. What do you think? And it went all the way to our CEO. Our CEO stepped in and said, let's have a one-on-one about this. Let's figure it out. And he was very happy to move these 7 employees into the positions that better suited their needs, address gaps in our organization, and, promoted them essentially. And they all are still with our organization today, a year later, very happy. Our organization is, knock on wood, still doing very well.
Yes.
And those 7 positions became available for other people in the organization to grow and for us to get external talent with new ideas and innovation to keep us moving on a path forward, I guess, rather than, putting us in this stagnant place of losing talent and just trying to replace it. We were able to grow because our employees kind of brought it to the forefront. So it definitely was a win-win. Why not?
Wow. I love that you say that. I say that in my course, that the best way to do it is to do that kind of stuff and to bring it up in like an intelligent way like that. Like put it on paper. Don't just say, I deserve more money because I've been here so long and Susie gets so much money. But if you can come and say, I see these are your gaps and here's how I help fill them. That's so cool. Your CEO went to listen to it. Thank you for sharing that too. Because I say those things, but you and I have never met. We haven't rehearsed this story. It's not like I gave you a script here and told you to say these things. It's good to know they happen in the wild, right?
Absolutely.
Ryan, we haven't done any of our questions today. We've been just chatting with Tamara, which is fantastic. Is there anything you feel like we need to cover that we haven't already?
Well, at this point, I think it would be cool to actually, if Tamara's willing to dig into that background a little bit, where you started with the psychology degree and not wanting or not necessarily striving for HR to where you're at now. Tell us a little bit about how you got here.
Sure. So it's a bit of a wild ride, but I'll share with you. I started off.
It usually is.
Yeah, definitely. I started off my undergraduate degree going for psychology. And when I was younger, I was like, I really want to do clinical psychology. I love helping others, and I think it'd be a great fit. I think I can do this. And I started digging into it and found, gee, I get very attached and emotional very easily, and this is not going to be the right path for me. But I really love helping others. So I was in this bind of, okay, I thought I was going to do clinical psychology. I've already kind of invested a year of school into this, and what am I going to do? So I said, you know what, let me just finish out with my general psychology degree. And as I was doing this, I took a course in IO psychology and went, wow, I get to help others in a workplace setting at a desk where I've always envisioned myself kind of, the nice button up suits and the nice computer. I don't do any of that now, but it was nice.
Oh yeah, that's the goal. That's the dream they sell you. Yeah, I'm going to go to a suit and business stuff.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, let me do this. So I ended up graduating, and I graduated within 2 years. So I actually did my BA very accelerated, and I got out and I said, well, I have no experience. Nobody's going to hire me. I should go on to do my master's, and I should do it in particular to IO psychology, because this is what I'd like to really do. So I went into IO psychology and I was doing my master's. And while I was doing this, I was working. And instead of going out and finding a new job, I actually stayed with a retail company that I had worked for prior when I was doing my undergraduate. So I worked for this retail company probably 3 years or so before hitting my master's. And I took a staffing supervisor position with them. And so I was overseeing our talent, helping them grow and develop, also working on the sales retail side of selling and really learning business acumen, and, all while doing shift schedules, hiring, and really, doing all this stuff within the particular store. My favorite part of the day to day was the administrative work, and which is weird, I know, and speaking to the team I had at the time and saying, how can I help you be better? Hey, maybe if we work this way, let's change it. Or, oh, we're having a hiring event. I would love for you to sit in on an interview with me, and then doing those interviews. And I really, really enjoyed this. So I was doing recruitment, and I didn't even really realize it at the time, but I really, really enjoyed it. And so after I graduated and I had my master's, I said, okay, it's time to go get what I would call a big girl job, right? So, I ended up leaving that company, and I went out there without a job, which, looking back, I probably should have kept it until I had another one.
Hey.
But I took some time to really, focus on my resume, focus on interview prep, which was huge, revamping my LinkedIn, really doing all the things that, like we mentioned, really sell yourself as the candidate. And I came across a small startup company where I was going to do growth and people management. I was like, I've never done a startup company. They offered me a job. I was super excited about it. And I said, great, I'm going to do it. Looking back, I probably should have looked into it a bit more, but I ended up going in, and I worked there for about 2 months, and I moved into project management within that same organization. They said, hey, listen, we're not really looking at people in growth at the moment because we really need a project manager. So we'd love for you to do this. And they gave me, whatever. So I said, okay, I'll do this for the time being and whatnot, and ended up doing that. And I absolutely loved scheduling and kind of working through the back end of project management. I really didn't love the constant client to face to face, right? So I love speaking to others, and I love being able to help. But when it's project management and you're constantly speaking to people, you're constantly working. I was working 24/7, and I couldn't really handle it. Nobody can, and I never suggest anybody to try that. So anyway, I was doing this, and they moved me up, and they said, we'd like for you to be the head of production and support here. And I said, okay, that's a pretty big title. I think it'd be great. And I moved into that role, and within 1 to 2 months, I was burnt. I could not handle my day to day. It was affecting my personal life. It was affecting a lot of things. And so I said, you know what? We're going to need to step away from this. And I was very grateful to have people around me who supported that decision. And I stepped away and said, I can't do this. At the time, I thought I had another job lined up when I was leaving. It was somebody who kind of came up to me and said, hey, we have this position in more of like a data analyst role, so to speak, more on the IO side, and we'd love for you to come work for us. And that didn't work out. So now I was at this point of, gee, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no job.
Yeah.
I have limited savings.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back to what I was doing, but I really need to figure out what my next step is. So I applied for 3.5 to 4 months. I promise you, I'm not exaggerating. It was over 400 applications.
Wow.
I applied to a lot of places, and my feedback in every interview I did, every application I sent, any of it, you don't have that practical experience. Why? Because I went into project management and basically software. That's not having anything to do with HR or IO. And so that was a major turnoff for a lot of companies. And as a recruiter now, I understand it. I think I have a bit of a different view on it, but I understand it. And so when I got this role, I said, this is my experience and this is how it can relate to this role. And I've done a lot of things, and I made myself as practical as possible within the work that I had done at my previous company and in my education. And I got the job here, and I was incredibly thrilled and, very excited. It is, I'm not just saying this, definitely, but really amazing team. It's very inclusive of growth and development. And I say this on every one of my interviews. It really, truly is a place where you can come and feel heard. I know that sounds very crazy and kind of corny, but genuinely, people want to listen to you. And you'll be shocked how many companies do not have the time of day or will yes you to death. I have given so many ideas with this company, and even though they're not all home runs, I'm aware one or two of them have made it into our day-to-day. Our applicant tracking system is something that I mentioned to our team, and they said, this is a good system. We like this.
Awesome.
And now we use it, and it makes my job easier. It makes our hiring manager's job easier. It's a better candidate experience. And I get to say, okay, I played a part in that decision, and I've helped our organization be better. So that's really.
And you did what it took to get it launched. Like, I could tell you actually did everything, because they don't whip out the checkbook and say, let's put more money at this thing that we're going to cut funding on unless they like what it's doing. Like, that's a very good sign. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's my bit of a background on me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So if I may, you mentioned that you grew up around data a lot. Was there a point in time where it kind of clicked that everything is data driven?
Yeah. So I think, part of my generation has always been really focused on technology. In the 8th grade, they were giving us iPads to take home and play with them and do homework on, and really kind of influence you to say, okay, technology is going to be part of your day to day, right? So I've always loved math. I don't know why. It's a weird subject to love, I know, but I loved it. And it was funny, in the 8th grade, we did, so I'm from New York. I didn't mention this, but within New York, we have Regents exams, and they kind of have a program in the area that I'm in that allows you to do those exams that are supposed to be taken in high school and middle school. So 8th grade for us. And I was part of this Regents class for math, and I loved it. I did my best to get a perfect score on that exam. And even though it was in the 8th grade, I was so proud. I ended up getting this perfect score. I was so excited. Mm-hmm. And then I went to high school and thought, I'm going to be the best person at math possible. And I took my 9th grade year, we did geometry. I cried every day. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I was so put off by math. I hated it. And it really was okay, well, I just have this hatred for this subject that I really loved. The following year, we ended up doing, I want to say it was algebra. It was algebra and trig or something like that. And I was oh, well, this is more aligned with what I love. So then I loved it again. And this kind of teetered back and forth kind of through the years. But my senior year of high school, I took statistics. And I loved it. I love statistics. I started putting the pieces together of my whole life has been all statistics, and my future is going to be based on statistics and data. And from that point forward, I think it really clicked of, okay, everything I'm doing, there's a number involved. There's some number that's going to back up whatever you're saying, right? You can say, I love pizza, and there's numbers that have to do with how many people in the world really love to eat pizza or how many people don't. And, maybe there's a particular part of the world that really enjoys it more than others. Why? And kind of allows you to get curious like that. So for me, that was a huge pivotal point. And, to be honest with you, I never really thought about it until we started having this conversation around data. I said, let me think back to it. So I think that was a huge part. But I did take mention for you guys too. I don't know if you guys are big on articles and things like that, but there was an article and I wrote it down because I wanted to share from Forbes. And it was called How the World Became Data-Driven and What's Next, from 2020 by Debnan Saha. I apologize if that's an incorrect way to pronounce the name, but it was a really great article. I read it years ago, and I kind of keep an archive of articles, oddly enough, just to refer back to, because, you never know what you'll find.
Oh, no, exactly.
Yeah. And there was a really cool quote, and I thought it's so relevant. This was in 2020, prior to COVID, and the world had changed, but I feel like it's even more relevant now. But I'd love to share it with you guys.
Please. Yeah.
To stay viable and thrive in this rapidly changing environment, business needs to be good at anticipating what's next and reacting in real time. When I was rereading the article, this stood out to me. And I thought, wow, this really has to do with every day, but it also really has to do with recruiting. And I know that's what we're talking about, so I wanted to kind of tie the two together. But, really, you can't predict the future without looking at the past and making those types of kind of guesses as to what's next, because that's what we're doing. We're forecasting the unknown. And, I started thinking back, and I mentioned I'd worked in retail, but we would have a business acumen that actually had all the data from the year prior, how much we sold, what the weather was, how many people came into our store, the conversion. And this was really telling because, one year, maybe it was a holiday, but the next year on that same date, it wasn't. And it gave us a really good predictor it tried to give us a good predictor of what, we would see that day based on that number, but they didn't include that external human factor of the weather was bad. It was a holiday. People were out of school. And so that was really an interesting thought for me. I think, data is super important, and the world is data driven, but it can never fully be just about data. So
I love that. That's so true. Yeah, no, you're so right on all that stuff, man. All those, I know a large retail company that everybody knows. They analyze your receipt before you get to the car. They know what you bought. They know what you decided not to buy. They know, what kind of weather. They know. I know. In logistics, I don't know. Maybe you deal with this. Maybe you don't. I was dealing with another logistics company that was watching the weather and realized that umbrellas were really selling, and they saw the storm was coming. So then they wanted to get a whole shipment of umbrellas before the storm, because they realized all their other stores that were about to get hit with the storm would be also wanting to sell more umbrellas. And I wonder if there's logistical switches you could do with customers based on different weather patterns and things too, and that's what's,
yeah,
it's all data. It's crazy how it all ties together. I'm going to try to, though, what you're saying in the world of recruiting, I'm going to try to work with our analysts too and start combing through LinkedIn and try to summarize what is an entry-level analyst, what is a mid-level analyst, what is a senior-level analyst, and how do they kind of specialize differently? Because a lot of the things are the same. You want that self-starter who can explain what to do, but also take feedback and is willing to give ideas, but can listen and comes with a lot of experience, but can gather stuff. But then there's also, they have to be an expert in IO or dealing with people, or being that branch manager is a certain expertise that they can leverage really heavily.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because it really means something different for each company. But I think you're spot on. If you have experience like 6+ years after that, where's that cutoff? What's the difference between 6 years and 20 years? You're kind of aware of the same things. So I think one of the key things to really focus on in at least today's day and age is going to be, we've focused in on adaptability, right? Everybody goes, well, I'm adaptable and I can do this. That's great, but show us why you're adaptable, right? So we as a company, I think as most recruiters do, love adaptability. We need it. However, we want somebody who's going to come in and advocate for themselves. We want somebody who's going to say, hey, I actually saw this cool thing online. I think it'd be really awesome if we could do it. What do you think? And at larger organizations, this is true too, but it takes maybe a little bit more of a process. Maybe it doesn't always reach the very top, but at least you're advocating for yourself, you're advocating for the company, and you're trying to make the company better in a way that you're not asked to do. And this is a very touchy topic for a lot of companies. And I think a lot of people now, especially post-COVID, they're saying a lot of what we do is, we come into work, we do what we need to do, and that is it. If you're asking us to do extra, pay us more, give us more benefits, this, that, and the third. But it's not necessarily asking to do more in this specific sense, right? Right. It's saying, do what you need to do, but think about it differently. Yes. Be a proactive thinker, be an active listener, as you mentioned, and really take what you're doing and figure out how you could do it better for you, not for the company, but for you. Make yourself more efficient, make your life easier. And in turn, let's make the organization better. Let's take what you're doing and put this within, all of the roles that are similar to yours, or say, you know what, that's a really great idea. Let's give you credit where credit's due. Let's make you a manager. And I want you to train others on how they can also do what you're doing. Let's do this together. And I think that's the part that a lot of people miss, or a lot of companies even miss in kind of expressing that.
Well, and I think you made a very good point too. Like if it's all the employee too. Like if I go to you and say, I demand you give me more money or give me these experiences, that's one way of approaching the problem. I could also say, man, there's a host of opportunities that I can go take advantage of and learn and grow and get real life experience on things. Now, I will also say that a lot of people have been burned or scared, or they don't, crunch culture in the video game world and all that stuff. They're afraid, well, you just want me to work for free. No, and I say to you, no, I say, if you can find those value adds to say, if I do X, the company will see Y and we'll both get better. You're setting those boundaries so you're not going to be exploited, but you're also opening yourself to those opportunities. But I love how you said it's on you. It's on you to go say that to the employer. Don't go demand, I want this, I should have this. I've been here so long, don't you know me? But just, I want to go help solve this problem that we've all been facing. And I think I have the skills. I may need help with this. I would love 100 people to come up with me to help solve my problems that way. Like I could see where you would.
Yeah. And it's honestly, it transpires into, I think, everyday life too. For me, the biggest lesson I ever learned personally outside of the workforce was you can't predict how somebody else is feeling, and nobody can, nobody's a mind reader. They're not going to know how you're feeling, what you're thinking, or what you're doing unless you express that. And so that's the key there. Express that in a professional and respectful way. And hopefully you're in an organization with a culture that is inclusive of this and encourages it and really empowers their employees to be those game changers in the industry. I think it's so hard, but I think it's really important that every company that you look at, whether you're applying or you're just kind of reviewing other types of job requisitions or descriptions, that you're not only looking at what they're saying about their culture, but any reviews that may be there regarding employee experiences, any pictures that they have up, are they inclusive of what you're looking to be a part of? In an interview, ask those questions. My favorite questions are ones around, I want you to be honest. Tell me about the culture. Tell me why you're there. I would love to. I'm proud of where I am. So I'm happy to share that with you. And you can very easily tell on the phone with somebody if they're not, so it's important.
It's a great company, and I really believe in the mission. It sounds like to somebody who's reading the script. Exactly. But somebody like you, it comes across loud and clear. And I mean, I want to say I acknowledge that not all companies are like this, like the company we're at right now. I've gone on interviews, and they've had me handwrite SQL code, and then afterwards be like, well, send us your W-2 so we can see you made as much as you thought you made. And I'm like, is that legal? And they're like, well, I didn't give you an offer yet, so it's not illegal. And I was like, I'm out. Like, I don't even want to deal with this. Like, it's just, no, I don't even care how much you want to pay me. I don't even care. But a lot of people, they think that every job's going to be like that. And they're not. A lot of jobs are very similar to what you're talking about. And a lot of companies are very much looking for people who want to come in and be energetic and give advice. But also, I think it's important to say, like, let's say you come up with a good idea. You come in and say something, and it's not a rock star idea. Your idea just got turned down. It's not time to go get mad or look for another company or anything like that, but maybe learn by, I could pitch this differently, or maybe I'm not seeing the full picture and I'm not solving the real problem or something like that, right?
Right. Well,
what would you do if you did that with some of your ideas that didn't go as well, right? Like,
I've done that.
Sure, me too. Everybody does.
I've definitely been in that position, and I think I don't want to say it goes back to the manager, but I will say the part that I look for when I come up with an idea, I'm extroverted to some extent, but I'm very shy, especially when it comes to my ideas and with kind of power dynamics, crossing any types of lines or things like that. And that's pretty much my weakness. If I was to be asked, I always think, I don't know where that line kind of ends, and I get nervous, and that's, I hold my own thoughts back, my own innovation, my own growth back. And that's something I'm working on. So for me, I've learned, with the right manager, if I kind of go back to the root of it and pick a company or, apply or whatever I'm doing, go with a company that I will have an open kind of line of communication with my upper and really be able to feel safe and comfortable in a conversation, and have that manager also too be one who can communicate properly back to me when an idea isn't great, then we're set up for success, even if it's not a rock star idea. So I can share, I've shared many ideas and they're not great. And it's never, no, we're not doing that. It's, okay, that's a great idea, but let's think about it like this. How would we solve this? Or, hey, maybe this is good for the long term. Hold that thought. Let's think about some of the things we can do in the short term that may support that in the future, but I just don't think we're there yet. And then seeing, how that manager reacts, I'm not going to be mad or upset. I'm going to think, oh, my thought process is they have more experience than I do. They probably know things that I don't know. They're higher up in the company. They have, different roles in the company.
Yep.
Maybe there's an external factor I'm just unaware of. If somebody came to me from, my team or said something to me about talent or recruiting, I'm also going to give feedback too. And maybe I'm not going to think it's the right time for their idea. And so at that point, I need to also communicate why back, or give them a reason or a different way of thinking, I would say, about this idea. And then hope that one day it kind of transpires into something we can use, or it kind of, maybe it's not the best idea. It was a learning experience, because then I can look back 5 years from now and go, wow, what was I thinking? This would have been terrible. Thank goodness I had a manager who said, let's not do this now. Let's think about it in a different way. So
I love it. Yeah, because it's hard to say, go take a risk, and we say it's going to be so great if it goes great. And if it doesn't, a lot of people think, oh, everybody's going to hate me. They're all going to laugh at me. They're going to talk about me funny in the manager meeting. And quite honestly, most of the time, they're going to forget it and move on and be like, oh, yeah, she tried. That was nice. We'll see what she does next time.
Exactly.
I love that. That's what you went through, too.
Yeah.
Oh, Ryan, any other questions we did want to get today? I know one I wanted to ask too, and Ryan, is our imposter syndrome question. Are you familiar with imposter syndrome? And if so, how do you handle that? I love your self-awareness, by the way. That I need to get better at this, that, and the other. A lot of people don't have that. So well done on that.
Thank you. Well, to start with that piece, I think it's so important. Nobody's perfect. And for me, I'm newer in my career, so I have a lot to learn. And if I don't take accountability or look ahead of it, I'm never going to get better, and I can never be in the positions that I hope to see. So that's just a little bit about that. I think it's so important. But yeah, so imposter syndrome, I personally don't think I have that at the current moment. However, I definitely have experienced this in the past. And, we talked a little bit about my background. With the prior startup I was a part of, it was an e-commerce software company. I was coming from little to no technical background. And then I became a project manager, where I had to oversee projects, be able to give estimates of timelines, really work with people to figure out how we could develop essentially a website for them. And so it did take me learning certain areas within the business. Mm-hmm. When I moved up to a role where I was a head of production and support, I really didn't feel like my capabilities and my abilities were really there, because I didn't have this technical background. I was managing a product that I didn't help develop or code or write, and I barely knew how to type a lick of CSS, right? I had no idea. So this was something, for me, I was like, why am I in this role? I don't really see why they've put me here, and do they think it's just because I'll do it? And it was a lot of questioning on my end. And I think really the key here is, acknowledge first and foremost that you're in that role for a reason, right? Whether you believe it or not, somebody does believe in you, and they think you have at one, if not all of the skills to be in this role. So yes, you may feel this way, but maybe take a step back and look at it from that point of view. And really think, okay, well, one, if you trust your manager, and hopefully you do, know they believe in you, right? And then really go and take it a step further and say, well, it's okay not to know everything. There's not a single person in the world who knows everything. Your manager does not know everything. Nobody in the company knows everything. It's a team effort. You have to work with others, and you have to learn along the way. It's a never-ending learning process at any organization you're at. Post-training, of course, you have the skills needed to do your day-to-day. But if you want to continue to grow and develop, there's going to be limits beyond what you're comfortable with. And that's something you have to kind of take into account when you feel this way. So, I think taking that step back, understanding those things and saying, okay, let's take a look at how I can become better. Let's take a look at the skills I can work on to not feel this way. What are the skills that I can't work on by myself? How do I approach those types of conversations with the ones who I need to? Maybe it's in my previous position, I spoke to developers. I said, hey, I'm not good at this. I don't know what I'm doing. Right. You have a great handle on it. What can I do to better myself? That's not going to take me a ton of time, and I don't need to be a developer. and they
I
gave
love
you
your approach to it
courses.
too. Everybody else has been saying, well,
Yeah.
I've built it, I've proven to myself, I've done good. And yours is like, no, I retrospectively looked at it and said, you know what? There's things I could change. That's how I know I'm not
Yeah.
feeling an imposter, because I'm not impostering. I'm just
Yeah.
asking for help.
Exactly.
That's awesome. But I mean, you also were able to identify things you were great at and loved from that position, and things that
Right.
you felt like you were faking till you make kind of
Yeah.
feeling. You're like, nah, I'm not going to do those. I'll focus on it. I love it though, how you went into all that. Like,
Thank you.
yeah, that had to be a heck of a realization to say, you know what? It's not that I can't do this. It's that it's
Right.
not for me. I shouldn't do this. I
Right.
could be getting more value doing something else for people.
Exactly.
And I think that's something people don't think with imposter syndrome. I think they feel like, how do I overcome it? How do I make this happen? And sometimes it's telling you what you're doing isn't for you, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to quit right away, but
Right.
objectively look at what you're doing and ask others for help. Get that 360 feedback. That was freaking
Exactly.
wonderful.
Oh,
Genius.
thank you. Yeah, I think too, moving into the type of generation that's moving into the workforce, that's really going to be the way that they're going to look at things too,
Yes.
because they were, for lack of a better term, kind of trained in thinking, we always have to grow and develop, and that's really the goal. And that's really when the number one thing people are looking for in their new roles based on this generational pull. Whereas before, I have people here who are like, well, what are the benefits? What is the pay? They weren't really looking for growth because it was kind of fixated in the job. You came in and you were going to move up. And now it's, what can I get value from here as far as my personal growth, my development that I can take elsewhere to attain those benefits or salaries or whatever the case is. And if a company can do both, it's gold.
I love that. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's that perspective is definitely very different, especially on the imposter syndrome. It's really interesting. I'm over here mulling it over, and like, I don't know, like Rob said, we haven't really heard anybody else talk about using imposter syndrome to necessarily better themselves so much as everybody saying, well, I deal with it. And, I a lot of it's been, I compare myself to others, I think. And like, I see what others are doing, and that kind of helps me not feel like that. But just that self-reflection, that's a super powerful piece of advice there. I really appreciate that.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I think that's just how I see it. I think that's innate for me, but
You're dead right. I agree completely. I think that your life is your own. My life is 100% up to me and what I make of it.
Right.
I mean, other things will come my way that help or hurt, but how I react to those things determines where I go. And if I'm feeling, hey, this isn't right, I've got to look at why I feel that. And either I'm right or I'm wrong. But it doesn't mean you're always right. Just power through, keep faking it. It doesn't mean you're always wrong either. And what's crazy about the way you approached it is it's so simple and so real. But I think most people are just afraid to go to their friends and say, hey, or their employees or their coworkers or peers or whatever, and say, hey, where am I not doing great? Or I don't think I'm doing great at this. And they're like, no, you are terrible at CSS. Honestly, you'd be better handwriting it and pseudocode and just giving it to me. That'd be great. And hearing that feedback is really helpful to you, because you're not trying to be king programmer. I'm not trying to be king programmer. I want to get enough done that we can get the program done and get it off. It's safe and completed, but I don't need to get the credit for writing the cool code. I think that reflection is just shocking. And it was fantastic.
Thank you.
It's that IO though, man. It's that ability to analyze yourself. You spend those extra couple of years getting good at it, and it's worth it.
There you go. It's a good skill to have, I think, by any means.
So I think a good way to round off this interview is just talking to you about how you use data a little bit. And I know we've talked about that a little bit, but like, is there something recently that you've worked on, or a project that the data has clicked, it's come out awesome, you're really excited to share it, something that you can't stop talking about?
So I think this one's a bit harder for us because the data that we have is not yet released to our team. So it's not something I can go into great detail on. However, we do an engagement survey every year. I think it's the second year they've done it. And the data from that has been really, really great. Our leadership team takes really great pride in the responses we get. We will get over 500 comments. We're only a 250 person organization. So, people will send multiple comments, and it's really great for us because we can segment that data by branch or location, so to speak. You can segment it by managers versus those who are maybe in entry-level operational roles. You can segment it by department, and you can really break down that data. For us, with the past 2 years we've done it, we've been able to see the good and the bad, right? So we actually get a very good level or high level view of what's really great with going well with the company, with our branches, what's not going well and why. And people will provide that to us. And I think a lot of that data is very telling of the initiatives that our CEO and our leadership team put forth during our leadership conference every year. They'll come and they'll say, here are the 3 things we want to accomplish. And last year it was along the lines of training for managers. I believe it was onboarding. And I believe the third one was better communication, overall company-wide communication. And although very little things that you would say, well, it's really easy to fix, we were doing most of those things. We weren't doing them necessarily 100%, well, maybe in that case. So we had to come up with different ideas and different ways of saying, okay, let's get creative. Clearly our emails are not communicating well enough. Maybe we can do town halls. Maybe we can do newsletters. Maybe we can have our leadership team visit each of the branches once a year and have that open line of communication. Maybe it's an anonymous, box where our employees can say, I'm feeling X, Y, or Z. And so for us, we were taking that information and being able to implement real change into the organization from the root, from our employees. So this year, I think they've done the survey, and I will be honest here, I'm not really too a part of that since I'm on the recruiting side. But from what I've heard and what I've kind of spoken with about our team is we really accomplished a lot of the first year goals that we had, which is wonderful. And then this year's goals, now we're pulling apart to say, okay, let's do that again. Let's replicate that process with different initiatives and let's make the organization better. So that is 100% a data-driven example, a real world example for us that really will help us in so many areas of our org. Not from just an engagement standpoint of keeping employees kind of happy in their day to day, but also how can we become more attractive to the average candidate? What type of candidate should we kind of target when we outsource or direct source essentially to these candidates and say, we want you to work for us because X, Y, and Z. Maybe X, Y, and Z aren't the right ways to attract the client or candidate rather.
Yep.
Maybe it's, hey, we have this, this, and that, and we're going to look towards a future of this. Are you interested? Instead of kind of just spewing things at them. So although I can't disclose a bunch of that data, I think it is so.
No, but I get that kind of stuff. Like you see a lot of companies right now, everybody's having a hard time staffing, and you see them do a lot of sign-on bonuses. And I'm like, these are just going to be 3 to 6 month employees, and then they're gone because you've really got to. If you're not staffing for the long term, you're going to get, and maybe that's what they want. I don't know, but I think a lot of people don't know. So they pull that lever. That's what they did before. So I know I'll give a sign-on bonus that gets me employees. I love how you're breaking down like the different ways to keep them and retain them and actually add the value back to them, right? Like the company, they're hiring you to make money. You should be able to give some of that back to them in some form or fashion. It's not always cash. I mean, some of my best stuff was working remote or, time off, things like that. I think people are opening up to way more than they did in the last 5-10 years,
100%. I will say, just touching on what you mentioned here, we have a quarterly profit share incentive that we do here. Every quarter, we give back a pretty large double-digit percentage back to our employees.
That's awesome.
Our CEO tripled it about 2.5-3 years ago because he really focuses in on our employee well-being and their growth and development. So it's an example of like a cash piece of it. But in addition to that, it's company-wide recognition to say, you've done the best job out of all of our branches. Kudos to you. What were you doing well that we can tell other branches? And it now becomes a learning experience. And that's very attractive to a lot of people as well.
Well, they want to be good every year because I could get a bonus every year. I didn't just have to sign on and get a new job. It's way easier to just be good at your job every year and get bonus than to not.
After 100%.
But it takes a CFO who's willing to say, I want to invest in my people. And I'm sure everybody's seen that, that analogy of the CFO saying, what if we invest in all of our people and we spend millions of dollars? And the CEO says, well, what if we don't and they leave? Right. And, you got to spend it one way or another. I think that's a great way to do it is tie the incentives directly to the company doing a good job, and it's
performance.
It keeps them going.
Absolutely.
But again, imagine all the data involved in that because you've got to track time in and time out, units moving, all that kind of stuff. Like there's a lot of data involved.
It's awesome to hear a little bit about that data involved that isn't directly translated, I guess, to making money. It's bettering the employee, the positions, the company, giving back, making sure everybody's happy, healthy, and well taken care of. Like Rob was saying earlier, it's like a relationship. Like it's really cool to hear from somebody, because all of the examples that you see on the internet especially are the people speaking the loudest about the companies doing the worst.
Right.
And so to have that other perspective from somebody who seems very happy in their current position, for what it's worth, is just, it's eye-opening. A lot of these episodes have been eye-opening. Rob likes to say that he's using this podcast to introduce me to his professional network and the data side of things, because I'm trying to move my marketing position a little bit more towards the data side of things now. Yeah. And it's just, every episode has been absolutely eye-opening about just like what all of what your position is, even just like from an employment standpoint to how you're dealing with data. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. You don't get the opportunity every day to really talk about yourself a lot and your company. So I love to share what I've learned, my knowledge, and hopefully, and today I have learned quite a bit. So having that back and forth teaches me about myself. It teaches me about the wonderful people I speak with. And it's always really great. So.
Oh, I'm going to segue that opportunity into this super baby thing that I've been looking up. It is a common question asked in the data analyst world is, what are some questions I'm going to get asked? And I don't want to look like an idiot when I answer them. What is a dumb way to answer it that you would kind of laugh at me? And what is a way that you would, have some hope for me? And I know a lot of people are very, again, you're answering for you, company of one, every company is different, standard disclaimer.
Yes. So with that, I think, and this is a little hard, I know this is probably not the answer you want from me, but fair. I'm gonna try to give some advice here that can fit to pretty much any IT role, any role outside of it. I think it'll just be beneficial for everybody.
Perfect.
And I don't want to focus it on a particular area of data or something like that, because one, I'm not an expert, and two, I think that those resources, granted, are very much available online. If you Google it, you will find so many questions and answers, and what to look for. So. Sure. To kind of just start, I think it's really important that people understand the different types of questions that can be asked in an interview. They're always going to have different types, whether that be a situational-based question about your behavior or a performance-based question about your behavior. Those are very common questions. You may be asked opinionated questions. You may be asked brain teasers. That's more, I think, on the tech side than anything. But you can also be ask questions around communication. So it really just varies on the role that you're going for and figuring out, okay, well, what types of questions may I be asked, right? I think in addition to that, thinking about the types of answers you're going to give are really important, right? This is the kind of meat of it. How do I answer perfectly? Well, it's a formula, right? A lot of tech and a lot of people are more fixated on, okay, well, I need a logical process to do well, right? So exactly. Is it an open-ended question where I'm going to have to spew a lot of words? Is it a closed-ended question where I'm answering 2 years, Is it something where I'm going to have to state it in a hypothetical way? First I would, then I wouldn't, or whatever the case is. Or is it really just something where they're looking for you to think outside the box and be quick on your feet, right? So that's really the general overview. And I think taking that a step further, I can speak to my own experience, of course. So for me, when I go into an interview, I'm trying to prove somebody's concrete experience and work with them to see their abstract experience of what could be and how they may fit into our organization, how they may fit into the role, maybe what their growth would look like. We want to see that long term. So going into it, that's always the goal. And any question I can kind of dig into is what I'm going to ask them. I will be very candid. I go in with a script of questions, but I promise you 95% of the time, it's not a scripted kind of conversation. An interview is a conversation. That's huge. I think a lot of people go in, well, thank you for an interview. It's a conversation. I want to know more about you. You want to know more about us as a company, and let's have that talk, right? Yep. So to give you some insight for performance-based questions, I usually will ask them, how many years have they been doing X skill? And I want them to verify what they wrote on the application, what is shown on their resume. Yep. If they vary differently, where they're saying, 3 years, but on their application or their resume, it says 7, that's a red flag and of concern to me. Do you really have this experience? Are you portraying yourself incorrectly? Do you really know the position you're applying for, right?
Oh my God. Yes.
So those are questions you'll frequently get asked. On the data side, If I want to know something concrete, have you run an analysis before? If so, have you ever run into any issues and how did you solve that issue? Now we're hitting several areas.
Yes. Oh, you're giving them all kinds of room to elaborate.
Yeah,
And I'll
exactly.
pause on that question because like, how have you run analysis and how have you solved that? Let's go back to your questions before. If I was going to use the algorithm you taught us, I would go through, okay, this person is not only asking for an example, they're trying to see how I talk about it. They want to see me speak to my example, tell a story, tell how I got the project, tell how it finished, any bumps along the way or things that happen. But you've got to, as the interviewee, I've got to be on the lookout trying to read what you're asking for, not just the words, but like, hey, she wants me to really explain myself. The goal isn't just to get her to say yes or no as fast as possible and get out that door. I've got to let her know I'm a person that she wants to have a long-term relationship with at this company.
Right. Exactly. And I think even taking that a step further, that logical piece right there, that process that you just discussed, for us, it's for an interviewer, for somebody who's speaking to another, it's huge to hear how you can logically put your thoughts into play, right? And with any type of technical based question or question where it's, hypothetical, maybe it's performance based, there's actually a formula that I'm sure others are aware of, and it's called the STAR method, right? So have you guys ever heard of this?
Writes down STAR method?
Yeah,
no.
STAR method. So this is going to be like the key. If anybody's watching, this is the part that they're going to want to stop and highlight.
This will be the blog, link in descriptions, all that
stuff.
There
you go. So basically the STAR method is a huge helper for pretty much anybody within an interviewing process. It's a structured way to answer a question and tell your story, right? Give them the why. So it stands for situation. So you give them the situation. T is for task. So what was the task? A is action. What did you do to solve this task? And lastly, what was the result? It could be good. It could be bad, but what was the result? And usually these questions are really, really easy to kind of answer because you can say, okay, well, here's a formula, I am able to introduce myself in a way that makes sense and I can give a concrete example as to why. However, if it was a hypothetical question, you can give a very logical explanation as to what you would do. And it sounds really great. It's a full story. You're not giving them a part. So it's really a great technique to use. There's a lot of resources online on this, but it's not something I share often, but it's huge. And honestly, if it's a really great question at the end, I think, let's say somebody was like, okay, well, what was your most successful or challenging project, maybe on data analysis, whatever the case is, you can give them that story and then end it at that result with, and this is why it was my most successful part, because a lot of people miss that. They just tell the story and they leave it there. But
STA, leave out that R at the end.
Yeah, exactly. So now you want to get that result and you want to get to the why. And it's funny, but it's your chance. Somebody's giving you a chance to tell them who you are in the most professional and logical way possible. And I think that's really a huge help.
No, I love that method though. It makes it simple for somebody to practice something, because now I could just go through and think of something I'm proud of and rehearse in the mirror a couple times. You know what I mean? And feel less like an idiot when I got to say it in front of a real person.
Yeah.
Oh man, you have all this hidden knowledge just lying around.
Thank you. I do want to address part of your question though from earlier too around, what would be a bad answer? I really,
because I think most people have their fear is they're afraid they're going to get laughed at in the interview or get I don't know.
Yeah. So I think that was a really great point, because again, I think this goes into pretty much everything we've talked about today, but you have to sit back and say, okay, well, you know what, you have weaknesses. There's going to be bad parts. And, you want to address those or be accountable ahead of time so that you can proactively avoid those things, right?
Yes.
So I did want to mention, I don't necessarily like saying that it's a bad answer because I don't think any answer is actually bad. I think the way somebody communicates an answer can be poor.
Fair.
That's really the key. And I think that's really 4 different types, right? So it's too short. Somebody just says, my strength is typing, whatever it is. Too long, where they say, well, my strength is, analyzing data and I'm able to do this. And they go on a very long tangent that doesn't really have much substance to it, right? Time is money. You have 30 minutes to sell yourself, right?
They start saying all the words and all the languages they've learned, and you're still like, I don't have the star. Like I still have the T. But
yes, exactly. So that's definitely a poor way to communicate. They may avoid the question. So let's say I'm asking somebody their strength and weakness. They'll tell me their strength and they'll stop at weakness and they won't say it. And then to the interviewer, for me, did you mishear the question? Did you purposefully not tell me a weakness?
Am I going to add new weaknesses, or are you aware of the ones you have? Or maybe they're not aware, which is a whole other weakness, right?
Exactly. And then I think, just playing off into a couple things we talked about, I think this is my pet peeve one, exaggerating an answer. So I will be honest, I'll be very candid. I've had interviews where my feedback was, you seemed too confident in what you were doing. It seems almost unbelievable that you've done these things in X amount of time. And it wasn't that it was unbelievable of what I was doing, because I will be honest, I truly did those things. However, it was the way I was communicating myself. I came across giving them all of the good and not kind of pinpointing some of the challenges or mistakes that I faced during that process. And had I used STAR, or had I kind of sat back and taken a second to say, what do they really want to hear about the strengths, and what can I show them that I've worked on?
Yes.
That was the key I was missing. So I think that's also a pretty poor way to communicate.
But I think that's so common. Like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to S all over them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm going to tell them all my strengths. And obviously, all my strengths will show them I'm so wonderful.
Right. And it's,
I love that.
Yeah. But I do think, as not straightforward as it was to say, this is a good answer, this is a bad answer, I think having the tools and resources needed to create those answers is 10 times more beneficial. So hopefully I could be of help.
No, that is awesome. You just gave Ryan and my editor about, 3 hours worth of work. This is going to be 2 or 3 different blog posts and all that. I can't wait. It's going to be great. But I mean, these are the things that people are searching for all the time. Like, they cannot find the answers, even with all the answers out there, because it's usually behind a paywall. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to have this frank conversation.
Yeah.
Join my $400 how to get recruited class, and you'll get recruited for every job, and we'll write your resumes, and it'll be super. And they go in and just stonewall face the interview. They don't know what to do because they didn't figure out STAR.
Right.
That's
something.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, everybody should be on the same team. So if we can help others become stronger when they're interviewing and really understand why they're interviewing and what they can provide to a company, then won't all the companies overall kind of benefit, So that's just my personal take on it.
I couldn't agree more. Oh, Ryan, anything else you want to make sure we cover before we let her go for the day? We've gotten her whole time.
Yeah, I think that is actually a really good note to end on. So, Tamara, one thing that we like to do at the end of every one of our podcast episodes is put you on the spot for 60 seconds to shout yourself out, any projects, any charities, anything that you care about that you want our viewers to know about, whether that's just to connect with you on LinkedIn, if they're looking for a job at, Janel Group, or if they're looking just to expand their professional network and talk more about HR or whatever else. So you've got the floor.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I wasn't expecting that. That was a lot. Okay. Well, I think first and foremost, thank you both for having me. I think that's very important to say. I really wanted to share that with you. Like I mentioned, you don't get the time always to speak about these things and really to help others, which is important for me. With that, I will say I do always welcome people reaching out to me. My LinkedIn is very public. I try to build my network daily. So please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It is my name. So Tamara Fuchs. Feel free to message me. I would love to be able to help however I can and provide insight. So I think that's really great. And then as far as the company here, so Janel Group, we are a freight forwarder and customs brokerage firm, so in logistics, and we always have positions available across 15 office locations. So there's usually something for everybody. So feel free to reach out to me on that or check out our website to see what types of careers we have open. And last but not least, I really like that you guys mentioned a charity or something like that. You don't have a charity necessarily, but and I'm not sure when this would air, but it is October currently, and it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and that's something I do hold very, very near to my heart. So always, hopefully everyone can support. Even just wearing pink and showing awareness is a huge help. Even if you're not donating physically, not everybody can, and that's okay. But just being aware of it, and I think being aware of all the kind of things that go around Breast Cancer Awareness Month is really awesome. So I'll end on that.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining Podcast Like a Business on our journey to discover just how everything is data. If you want to watch the next episode or one of our favorites, click on the thumbnails here for more Podcast Lab and find us wherever you like to listen to podcasts.